After I died, my wife was consumed by regret. On the day of the car crash, I was on the brink of death, but my wife forced me to donate blood for her first love. She even threatened to abort our child if I refused, turning my final moments into a living hell. In the end, I bled to death. And still, she cried, begging me to look at her just one more time. The day Olivia came back to the country, I was caught in a multi-car pileup while driving to the airport. As I was being loaded into the ambulance, a nurse managed to get Olivia on the phone. Before the nurse could even say a word, Olivia's icy, dismissive command came through the speaker. "I was just looking for you. Julian needs a blood transfusion. Get over here now." Before I had a chance to speak, I began coughing up mouthfuls of blood. The nurse took the phone, her voice urgent. "Is this Lucas's next of kin? This is Chicago General Hospital. The patient was in a car accident and is in critical condition. We need you to come to the hospital immediately." Olivia was silent for a moment. Then her voice turned to ice. "Lucas, I don't care what kind of stunt you're pulling. You get over here and donate blood this instant. If anything happens to Julian, I am getting an abortion immediately." The nurse grew frantic. "But he's severely injured right now." Before she could finish, Olivia interrupted her. "Then draw his blood before he dies." Then she hung up. A surge of blood filled my throat and sinuses. I could not breathe, so I started desperately swallowing it down. I wondered how a living, breathing person could say something so heartless. If I survived this, I would not even wait for her to bring it up. I would be the one taking her to get the abortion. Our child did not deserve a mother so devoid of compassion. I never got the chance. I did not make it. I became a ghost, floating aimlessly in the empty air. I watched as the nurses tried to call Olivia again, but they could not get through. They searched for other contacts, but there were none. I have been an orphan my whole life, raised in a group home. After the director passed away, Olivia's parents, the Harrisons, took me in. Olivia despised me from the start. She was convinced I was stealing her parents' affection, and she tried everything to drive me away. Eventually, she grudgingly accepted my presence and even agreed to marry me. It was only after the wedding that I realized her true intention. She wanted me to be a personal blood bank for Julian. Thanks to her control and isolation, I had no friends, no one in the world but her. The nurses gave up and left my body in the morgue. My soul was trapped there with it. A wave of misery washed over me. "If I cannot move on, I guess I'm stuck in this hospital forever," I muttered. "Wow, that sucks," a voice said. A ghost of a boy, maybe 12 or 13, floated up beside me. My eyes widened in terror. "A ghost!" I yelled. Where is the ghost?" he shrieked, looking even more frightened than I was. I stared, then cautiously pointed at him. It took him a second to understand. He pondered for a moment, accepted his new reality with a sigh, and said, "Sorry, I am still new to this whole ghost thing." Then he chuckled. "But seriously, you are a grown man who is afraid of ghosts." I felt a flush of embarrassment. I had not always been this way. Years ago, when I first moved in with the Harrisons, Olivia tried to get rid of me by leaving me alone in the woods deep in the night. The terrifying sounds from that night left a permanent scar. Ever since, I have been afraid of the dark and of ghosts. Staring at the rows of bodies in the morgue sent a chill down my spine. I could not stay there any longer, so the boy and I floated away. He told me his name was Leo. He died recently, and since no family had come to claim his body, his spirit was stuck here. We found other spirits lingering in the hospital's corners. Many of them were seemingly unaware they were dead, going about their routines. One ghost squatted on the floor, smoking a phantom cigarette with a look of deep sorrow. Another stood lost in the middle of a bustling hallway, staring blankly. I even saw the ghost of security guard. He stood diligently at his post in the main lobby, greeting and saluting every person who walked past. Of course, no one saw him, and no one ever responded. A pang of sadness hit my chest. It made me think of my relationship with Olivia. She ignored me in the exact same way. From the 2-hour meals I would cook for her that she would scrape into the trash without a word, to the blood I gave to keep her first love alive, she never truly saw me no matter what I did for all those years. Just then, A woman in a hurry walked straight through the security guard's spectral form. I froze when I recognized the familiar figure. It was my wife, Olivia. She was as slender and beautiful as ever, with that same cold, aloof air about her. But her face was pale, and the slight curve of her pregnant belly was gone. It hit me in an instant. She had already gotten the abortion. A dull ache spread through my chest. Still, it was for the best. Olivia's heart had always belonged to Julian. Bringing a child into that would have been a disaster. Even knowing that, it felt like a gaping hole had been torn in my chest, a bone-chilling wind whistling through it. Leo and I followed her. Olivia was on her phone, dialing my number. Was she trying to call me? Since the nurses had not been able to reach her, my phone had been put away in storage. It must have been dead by now. Sure enough, the call did not connect. Her face darkened as she typed out a message. Lucas, you have 3 minutes to get to the hospital. If you're not here in 5 minutes, I swear I am getting rid of this baby. Leo swooned beside me. Wow, she is so intense. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, that is her. She was the Harrison heiress, and she had always been a woman of extremes. Julian was her childhood friend, the boy she grew up with. He went abroad when they were 18, but she had to stay behind to take over the family business. He promised to return in 3 years, but instead he settled overseas. Later, purely to spite him, she married me. For years, I tried my best to be a good husband. I took care of every little thing around the house, and in my spare time I studied business, hoping I could one day help her at Harrison Enterprises. But none of it mattered. The moment Julian came back 6 months ago, I lost everything all over again. Leo shot me a confused look, but said nothing. We watched Olivia enter a room down the hall. It was the hospital's most luxurious private suite. Julian was lying in bed, looking thin and pale, his usual suave charm replaced by a sickly fragility. Olivia, you're back. Did you get a hold of Lucas? Julian asked. His phone is off, Olivia replied, her face tight. Julian's face grew even paler. Olivia, do not be too hard on him. I know he hates me, that he is jealous. I get it, he continued. But can you promise me something before I die? Promise you will divorce him. Being forced to stay away from you was the biggest regret of my life. I did not want to die with that still hanging over me. I'm not afraid to die, really. I'm just worried about you. What you will do when I am gone, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Olivia interrupted him, nestling into his embrace and whispering gently. You're going to be fine. There are other blood banks. I already have people searching, she said. And do not worry about Lucas. I will find him if I have to tear this city apart. As she said my name, her expression hardened. With me, she was always so cold and superior. Leo was tearing up beside me. They really love each other, he sniffled. I just smiled. They sure do. I think so too, if that woman was not my wife. Leo's brain seemed to short-circuit. He even stopped crying. Oh, I am sorry, he whispered after a moment. It is fine. I came to terms with it a long time ago. Words cannot describe the years of cruelty, neglect, and torment from Olivia. I had grown numb to it, but thinking about our unborn child, I still felt a flicker of something. An unexplainable anger began to build in my chest, burning hotter and hotter. With a loud pop, the light bulb on the ceiling shattered. Olivia cried out in surprise. Julian tightened his arm around her, saying weakly, It is okay, Olivia. I am here. Do not be scared. Olivia stood frozen for a long moment before seeming to snap out of it with a small laugh. You are afraid of the dark yourself, and you are trying to comfort me, she said. Julian, you still care about me, just as much as you always have. Julian remained silent. Olivia felt his tender gaze on her and seemed to guess his thoughts, her cheeks flushing red. I will go arrange for a new room, she said, practically fleeing from the suite. Seeing her blush like that sent a sharp pain through my chest. Olivia hated feeling unsafe. Once she stayed out too late in a remote area, and I had to overcome my own fear of the dark to go get her. When she saw how nervous I was, she just looked at me with contempt. Lucas, you are a grown man, and you are afraid of the dark. You are pathetic. She brought it up several times after that, her eyes always filled with disgust. A man should not be afraid of the dark. The man I imagined myself with would be fearless. But now Julian was afraid of the dark, and it did not change a thing for her. The difference between being loved and not being loved was painfully clear. With only Julian left in the room, he sat up in bed, watching Olivia's retreating figure. A smug, triumphant smile spread across his face, all traces of his earlier weakness gone. "It is fine. I am not in a hurry. You will be mine sooner or later," he murmured. Leo's eyes went wide, stunned by his phoniness. I, on the other hand, was used to it. I knew Julian was not sick. He just wanted an excuse for Olivia to torment me. He enjoyed seeing me suffer, reduced to a shell of a man. I tried to tell Olivia the truth when I found out, but she refused to believe me. The good news was I was dead now. I had nothing left to lose. He was the one who should be worried. I watched the gloating Julian, a cold glint in my spectral eyes. The Harrison family owned a stake in the hospital, so all it took was one phone call from Olivia to get Julian moved to an even more luxurious suite. With the Harrisons' power and money, they quickly found another donor for Julian's transfusion. The two of them were perfectly happy, the picture of warmth and affection. And still, Olivia had not found me. With the Harrisons' influence, finding a dead body should have been simple. The fact that she had not meant she clearly was not wasting much effort on it. She wanted me to come crawling back to her. This was just to prove she still had control. When I did not, she grew more and more irate, leaving me a series of furious voice messages. "Lucas, I am warning you," one of them snarled. "If you do not come back, you can forget about ever having children in this lifetime." Children? I had to laugh. She had used my desire for a family to threaten and manipulate me time and again. It never occurred to her that my lifetime was already over. She would never guess that while she and Julian were wrapped up in their tender reunion, I was right there with them. My soul and my corpse were just floors away, slowly decaying in despair. After hearing my story, Leo seemed even angrier than I was, constantly talking about helping me get revenge. With his help, I gradually learned how to enter people's dreams. Apparently, the dream world is the closest plane to our ghostly dimension. So one night, after Julian fell asleep, I took the indignant Leo with me and slipped right into his dream. His dreamscape was pitch black, a reflection of his own dark and twisted mind. When we arrived, he was in the middle of an intimate moment with a dream version of Olivia. This dream Olivia was lounging on a sofa, her eyes full of adoration, her usually cold features softened with affection. When I appeared, she glanced up at me, a small, welcoming smile on her lips. I froze for a second before realizing this could not be the real Olivia. Her real attitude toward me was always one of cold indifference. Her smiles were reserved for mockery and scorn. As if on cue, with a clap of thunder, the dream Olivia dissolved into smoke. Julian saw us, and his eyes widened in stunned disbelief. "Big Brother Ghost, I will get revenge for you." Leo shot me a wicked grin. He then proceeded to put on a show for Julian, graphically demonstrating his head coming off, blood pouring from his eyes and ears, and his tongue splitting in two. Julian scrambled away, screaming in terror. His lips were drained of color, his face paler than my own one-day-old corpse. I could not just stand by and watch. Leo was doing this for me, so I had to join in. I let my tongue loll out, flew over to Julian, and did a full 360-degree head spin, just like in the horror movies. He opened his mouth to scream, but then he saw my face and froze. "Lucas, you are dead. You are really dead." The terror on his face faded, replaced by a strange look of triumph and satisfaction. I was still trying to process his reaction when a powerful force suddenly shoved me out of the dream. Leo and I tumbled out of the dreamscape. Olivia had noticed Julian tossing and turning and had woken him up. She looked at him, her eyes filled with concern. "A nightmare?" she asked, her voice low. She reached out and gently wiped the sweat from his forehead. Her movements were so careful, so tender. Seeing that look of deep affection in her eyes, I froze. Even as a ghost, I felt a familiar, bitter pang in my chest. In all our years together, Olivia had never comforted me like that. No matter what I was going through, she would just get impatient and mock me for being overly dramatic. I always told myself it was because she was busy running Harrison Enterprises. I told myself she was just cold to everyone. But now I saw the truth. She was capable of being gentle and attentive, just not with me. The pain in my chest was so sharp it was almost numb. Julian collapsed into Olivia's arms, his voice weak. "Olivia, I had a dream that something terrible happened to me. I dreamed that you fell for Lucas again and left me." He pleaded, "Please do not abandon me for him, okay?" He looked at her with pleading eyes. He was mentioning me on purpose, clearly trying to stir up trouble. But for some reason, this time Olivia did not immediately shut him down. Instead, her expression grew colder by the second, her amber eyes turning frosty. It reminded me that her shouting was not what was scary. It was this quiet, simmering rage that was truly terrifying. Shortly after Julian left the country, there was an incident. At a Harrison family dinner, relatives kept joking that Olivia and I should get married. She did not object, and I was secretly overjoyed, thinking she might actually agree. But after the party, right in front of me, she strangled the small dog I had owned for years. I screamed until my throat was raw, forced to watch as my dog went limp in her hands. "Lucas, recognize your place," she had said, her voice chillingly calm. "Do not ever desire something you cannot have, or next time the punishment will be 10 times worse." Her expression then was as cold and merciless as a demon's. Even now, the memory makes my blood run cold. That demonic face from my past began to merge with the one I was looking at now. I wondered if I had angered her to the point of madness again. What will my punishment be this time? Would she wrap her hands around my throat, just as she did with my dog? Would she do it to prove to Julian once, and for all that I meant nothing to her? Or would it be like before, when she would wait until I was weak from giving blood, then slam my face into the floor and force me to kneel before Julian? She would tell me it was punishment for my disobedience. I let out a bitter, self-mocking laugh. The darkness of the past closed in around me again, but this time it felt exhilarating. It was like watching a hurricane rage from behind the safety of reinforced glass, a thrilling and satisfying feeling of mocking a disaster that could no longer touch me. If I could, I would enter her dreams just to gloat. "See, I am dead. What can you possibly do to me now?" The thought almost made me laugh out loud, but as the silent laugh formed, I felt phantom tears stream down my face. I never got the chance. For the next few days, Olivia was busy with something outside the hospital. She barely spent any time with Julian. My spirit was confined to the hospital grounds, so I could not follow her. I guess it had something to do with her company. She looked exhausted every time she returned. It also seemed my disappearance was finally getting to her. She started actively searching for me, having her people check all my old haunts and contact all my friends. Of course, they found nothing. It was almost funny. What friend did I have? After I married her, she had isolated me so completely. Everyone knew how much she despised me, and no one dared to risk her wrath by staying in touch. I sat on the windowsill, enjoying the sight of Olivia's growing frustration. "Olivia," Julian began, "you do not think Lucas actually ran away, do you? He was always so resistant to." He trailed off. Olivia's voice was low and cold. "I had his passport flagged. There is no record of him leaving the country. He must know you really well then, to know how to hide from you," Julian mused. He then quickly covered his mouth as if he had said too much, but his words only made Olivia's expression darken further. She turned to leave, but Julian quickly grabbed her in a hug. His voice was frail. "Olivia, just forget about him. He is an orphan. Your family took him in. You protected him. You even married him and gave him a life of comfort. You should be grateful. But the one time you asked for something small, he runs and hides," he continued. "Olivia, he is selfish. He does not deserve you. You need someone who is more considerate, someone who truly loves you, to share your burdens." His eyes darted around shiftily. The sight of it made me sick. I was about to look away when Olivia suddenly shoved him off of her. Julian stared at her, stunned. I was shocked too. "I'm sorry," Olivia said, her voice flat. "Lucas and I had an agreement." It took me a moment to remember what she was talking about. I had almost completely forgotten about that agreement. When Julian first came back, he faked a medical chart claiming he had leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant, all to test Olivia's loyalty. She, in turn, threatened our unborn child to force me to be the donor. That incident was the final straw. I realized fighting back was useless, so I asked for a divorce. To keep me in line, Olivia's attitude suddenly softened. For the first time ever, she compromised, and we made a deal with a few key conditions. The final condition was that she could never get together with Julian, and in return, I would never ask for a divorce again. I knew the paper meant nothing to her, but I admit her temporary kindness clouded my judgment. Deep down, I still did not want to leave her. I wanted a normal life, a healthy family with her. But just as I had suspected, it was not long before Olivia broke her promise. She had me held captive, tormented me, and forced me to give blood. She had violated every single condition except the last one, and I figured that one was coming soon. Hearing her bring up that agreement now was just laughable. Julian grew anxious at her words. "Olivia," he started, but was cut off by the ringing of her phone. She answered it. "Ms. Harrison, we have located Lucas." Olivia did not seem to catch the hesitation in her assistant's voice. She just scoffed. "So he has finally decided to crawl out of his hole." For a second, I could have sworn she sounded relieved. "Bring him to me," Olivia commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Miss Harrison, 5 days ago, Lucas was in a car accident. He was pronounced dead at the scene. His body is in the morgue, in the basement of your current hospital." Olivia froze, completely still. "What did you say?" The voice on the phone was perfectly clear. There was no way she had not heard. But at her unspoken command, the assistant repeated the information word for word. I saw Olivia's pupils contract, her body go rigid. She just stood there, completely dazed, long after the call had ended. She was so lost in her shock that she did not notice the subtle shift in Julian's expression. He looked pleased, but he quickly composed his face into a mask of sorrow. "Olivia, I am so sorry," he said. "Let's go down and see him together." "See what?" "He is dead. What is there to see?" Olivia snapped, her voice suddenly vicious. It was the first time I had ever heard her speak to Julian that way. Julian was taken aback and fell silent. "I'm sorry, Olivia," he started, but Olivia had already turned and walked out of the room. She did not give him a second glance. I noticed her steps were unsteady, her movements stiff and robotic, as if she were in a trance. She stumbled several times, nearly falling. I did not understand. Hearing that I was dead, should she not have been happy? I could not read her mind, and I certainly could not ask her. So I just followed her down the flights of stairs to the morgue in the basement. A doctor at the entrance tried to stop her with a few routine questions, but she suddenly screamed at him with a ferocity I had never seen. With me, she could be monstrous, but in public, she was always the picture of calm, collected elegance. This was the first time I had ever seen her lose control in front of a stranger. The doctor wheeled my body out on a gurney. It was the first time I'd seen myself since I died. My lips were bloodless, my face a ghastly white, and my clothes were stained with huge patches of dried blood. My arms dangled lifelessly at my sides, and my head was misshapen from the impact. It was still me, but it was a horrifying sight. I saw the corners of Olivia's eyes turn red. After a long moment, her slender, elegant fingers began to tremble as she reached out and touched my face. I was stunned into silence, completely taken by surprise. Olivia was a notorious germaphobe. She once told me that because I came from an orphanage, even my blood was dirty. She never let me touch her when I was alive. But now she did not seem to care that I was a bloody, broken corpse. Her gaze moved over my face, inch by inch, as her eyes grew redder and filled with tears. "He was in a bad accident," the doctor said quietly from behind her. "We got to him in time, but somewhere during the treatment, he just seemed to lose the will to live." Olivia's body trembled slightly, as if she had just remembered something. She must have been thinking about that phone call from the nurse. The doctor's words made it clear to me, too. I could have survived, but that phone call had extinguished any desire I had to keep fighting. but maybe being a ghost for a while had faded my memories. I cannot quite recall why that one call had made me give up. "My condolences," the doctor said, preparing to wheel the gurney away. But just then, Olivia completely lost control. She grabbed my corpse by the shoulders, shaking it. "Lucas, wake up. You're playing another trick on me, are you not?" The doctor rushed to intervene, but she shoved him aside. She pulled my body into her arms, holding it tight as tears streamed down her face. Leo, who had just floated over to see me, was so shocked by the scene that he froze in the doorway, nearly disintegrating. I was simply astounded by her outburst. It was the first time I had ever seen her cry, and she was crying for me. For a moment, I felt a strange sense of shock. Then I remembered I was already dead. All her affection and tears meant nothing to me now. An apology this late is worth less than dirt. After some time, the doctor, unable to control the situation, called for backup. It took several orderlies to finally pry her away from my body. "I think she might actually love you," Leo said, his voice hoarse from crying. 1,000 conflicting emotions rose in my chest, making it hard to breathe. Finally, I just let out a hollow, self-mocking laugh. "Let's hope so." A few days later, Olivia arranged for my cremation. But instead of interring my ashes in a cemetery, she brought the urn back to our house. With her money, she could have bought any plot she wanted. I could not understand her reasoning, not that I could give her any advice. My spirit was still bound to her, so I was trapped, haunting the empty mansion day after day, watching time slip by. Even when I was alive, Olivia rarely came home, first because she hated me, and later because Julian returned. I wanted to leave, but I knew I could not fight against her. So I stayed alone in that silent, lifeless house. I never imagined that after being a prisoner in this house and life, my soul would be trapped here in death. I was not sure why I had not moved on yet, but lately I noticed my form was becoming more transparent. I took it as a good sign. One night, I was listlessly basking in the moonlight when the front door, untouched for weeks, suddenly opened. An exhausted-looking Olivia walked in. Just as she always did, she took off her coat and held it out to her side. But when she let go, the coat simply dropped to the floor. Olivia froze for a second. She always preferred the house to be quiet, so the housekeeper only came in the evenings. Most of the time, I was the only one here. I had loved her, so I was always there to greet her. No matter how late she came home, I would take her coat and have her slippers ready. But now I was dead. There was no one left to do that for her. She stood there for only a few seconds before picking up the coat herself, dusting it off, and placing it on the rack. Then she went to the shoe closet to get her slippers. She paused again when she saw my pair of slippers sitting next to hers. It had been almost a month. A fine layer of dust had settled on the soft fabric. Her fingers clenched for a moment, but then she straightened up and walked into the living room as if nothing had happened. She threw herself onto the sofa, rubbing her temples before leaning back and closing her eyes. I floated closer and saw how truly exhausted she looked. She, who was always so perfectly put together, had dark circles under her eyes. She looked like a wreck. Was this karma? So soon? My curiosity flared. After a while, seeing her eyes were still closed, I prepared to slip into her dream, but I was immediately repelled. She was not asleep. As if she sensed my presence, Olivia's eyes snapped open, and she stared directly at the spot where I was floating. Even knowing she could not see me, her bloodshot gaze made me freeze. She slowly walked toward me, passed right through me, and stopped at the refrigerator. It was covered in several of my old sticky notes. "Olivia on business trip, 8-hour time difference. Remind her to eat. Olivia's flight tomorrow, 5 p.m. Remember to pick her up. 7 p.m. Meet Julian at the airport." Olivia's fingers trembled as she traced the letters on the notes, her eyes turning red. My memory was never great. Once on a rare occasion she came home, I lost track of time, and by the time I had dinner ready, she was already gone. After that, I started leaving myself reminders on the fridge. I had written these notes during her last business trip, but I had no memory of that last one, the one about meeting Julian. And if I recalled correctly, the coroner had placed my time of death right around then. Could my death have something to do with him? Just then, the doorbell rang. Olivia opened the door to find a woman standing on the porch. The woman looked surprised to see her. "Excuse me, is a Mr. Julian here?" she asked. Olivia's gaze was sharp. "What is this about?" "A Mr. Julian ordered a custom set of vinyl records from our shop a few days ago. He insisted they be delivered today." The delivery woman's eyes lit up in recognition. "Oh, you must be his wife. His phone's lock screen is a picture of you. I saw it when he was paying. He must really love you. He said you were a fan of these old records, so he commissioned us to track them down ages ago. They were incredibly hard to find, but he would come in every single morning to check on the progress." She paused. "He has not been in for a while, though." "Oh, I remember now. He mentioned an anniversary trip. You must have just gotten back from your honeymoon. He said he wanted to give them to you for your wedding anniversary, so the timing is perfect," she chirped. "Is he not home? He mentioned he wanted to give them to you himself." The woman continued to chatter away, but with every word she spoke, the color drained from Olivia's face. Sensing the sudden shift in mood, the delivery woman made a quick excuse and hurried away. Olivia lifted a set of classic vinyls from the box. Tucked inside was a small card in my handwriting. "For Olivia, I hope you will always be happy." It was only a few words, but she suddenly seemed to deflate, collapsing to the floor, clutching my gift, and sobbing into her hands. I started to think Leo might be right. Maybe, just maybe, a small part of her had actually cared for me. She had stood up for me once when we first got married. Everyone knew the Harrisons had taken me in from an orphanage and that Olivia despised me. No one respected me or treated me like her husband. Behind my back, they called me a gold digger, a kept man, and worse. At first, it was just whispers and snide remarks, but when they saw that neither Olivia nor her family reacted, they grew bolder. At one party, a group of rich kids openly mocked me and poured a drink over my head. That was the one time I fought back, but I was outnumbered, and they quickly pinned me to the floor. The ringleader pressed his shoe onto my face, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are nothing but Olivia's unwanted pet. You think you could stand up to me? I could have you killed, and no one would ever know." I heard the Harrisons found him in an orphanage. "A real stray. No wonder Olivia cannot stand him," another one chimed in. "Look at him now, like a pathetic drowned rat." They all burst out laughing. My face was being ground into the dirt, and I could barely breathe. Suddenly, Olivia was there. Her bodyguards had the ringleader restrained in an instant. A cold sneer played on her lips. "Who did you just call a dog?" She was smiling, but her eyes were pure ice. The other guys scattered immediately. The leader, terrified, began to tremble and beg, insisting he was only insulting me and meant no disrespect to her. Olivia ignored his pleas. Her dark eyes fell on the wine staining my shirt. She picked up a nearby bottle of red wine, handed it to me, and uttered a single cold command, "Fool." She had never interfered in my problems before, but that night, everything she did was to defend me. In the weeks that followed, every one of those kids and their families faced severe consequences. It was her first major power play after taking over Harrison Enterprises, and it sent a shockwave through our social circle. No one could believe she would go to such lengths for me. I can still hear her words from that night. "Lucas is my husband. Anyone who touches him again dies." That was the one and only time I allowed myself to think maybe she did care about me. I thought it was a new beginning for us. I did not realize it was a death sentence, the last glimmer of light before an endless night. After that, no one dared to bully me anymore. But no one dared to help me either. Any flicker of sympathy from others was extinguished by her power. She had me exactly where she wanted me, trapped in a cage. I was ready to be bled for Julian whenever she commanded. That one word, husband, had cost me everything. Every moment of kindness she ever showed me had a price, and I paid it with my life. And then, slowly, it started to come back to me, the truth about how I died. As Olivia clutched the records, she seemed to remember something as well. Her face went blank for a second, and then she rushed out of the house. A long time passed. I was still trapped in the mansion. Eventually, Leo brought me a message from some other ghosts around town. Apparently, things between Olivia and Julian had become tense. No matter how Julian tried to win her over, Olivia remained cold and distant. They even had a huge fight, though Leo could not make out the words. After that, Olivia stopped visiting the hospital altogether. She did not even show up on the day Julian was discharged. Leo told me that Julian had screamed a question at her over the phone that day. "You actually fell in love with him, did you not?" And Olivia did not deny it. Leo was convinced, now more than ever, that she had truly loved me. I found it almost comical, but I did not argue the point with him. It was meaningless now. Olivia's love, or lack thereof, was nothing more than a bit of idle gossip for a ghost. Even the ghost who relayed the message found it hilarious. But through that incident, I actually made a few friends. I started to enjoy our conversations, listening to their stories and jokes. I was still a little timid at first, but their sincerity put me at ease in a way I had not felt in years. When I was alive, I was always walking on eggshells around Olivia, carefully weighing every word. Over time, I had completely forgotten how to just be myself with people. I never expected to make friends in the afterlife. I asked them why I was still stuck here, but they were not sure. The consensus was that I must have some kind of unfinished business. After thinking about it for a long time, I started to suspect what it might be. One evening, I was in the middle of a poker game with my new friends when, to my surprise, Olivia came home. She was clearly drunk. The smell of alcohol hit me the moment she walked through the door. Before any of us could guess what was wrong, she stumbled into the bedroom, grabbed my urn, and collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. My friend stared, speechless. The phantom cards I was holding fell right through my hands. Olivia let out a guttural cry, slamming her fist against the wall in a frenzy. "Why, Lucas, why did you not tell me?" she screamed. "Why are you torturing me like this? You promised you would pick me up at the airport when I got back. How could you break your promise? How could you lie to me?" Eventually, her rage subsided into a desperate plea. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I know everything now," she whispered. "It was my fault. It was always my fault. Please just come back. I am begging you." She clutched the urn to her chest, her voice trembling and her lips pale. She sounded so broken, so humble. I could hardly believe this was the same woman who had so casually demanded my life for Julian. "Olivia, you cannot bring him back. Stop torturing yourself like this," a new voice said. "If Lucas could see you now, this is not what he would want." It was Julian. I did not know when he arrived, but he looked far too comfortable in my home. I started to remember. She had brought him here once when I was still alive. I had gotten jealous and told him to leave, but Olivia just called me petty and explained that he was too drunk to go home. I relented, and she ended up staying by his side all night. After that, whenever Olivia was out, Julian would take the opportunity to taunt me, bragging about how much she cared for him. I once recorded one of his taunts and sent the video to Olivia, but she never even mentioned it. Julian rushed forward to help her up, but before he could touch her, she shoved him away, her expression glacial. "Who let you in here? Get out." Her eyes were filled with a murderous rage. I was shocked. I had never heard her speak to Julian that way, but he did not seem surprised at all, almost as if he was used to it. He scrambled up from the floor and grabbed at her sleeve. "Olivia, I know I was wrong. I should not have asked to meet with him, but I swear his death had nothing to do with me," he pleaded. "You promised you would always believe me, that you loved me. You said you would be with me as soon as you left him. Have you forgotten everything you promised?" He began to cry, but Olivia's expression suddenly shifted, a strange calm washing over her. Thinking he was getting through to her, Julian reached for her hand again, but her next words stopped him dead in his tracks. "So that is why you kept provoking Lucas," she said, her voice eerily calm. Julian's eyes widened in shock. "How did you?" Olivia let out a bitter laugh. "If I had not hired an investigator, I never would have known about all the little games you were playing behind my back." Her voice grew louder with each word. "All these years, you lied about being sick. You made me torture him. You made me kill our child. And you drove him to his death. Julian, I swear I will make you pay for this." "Olivia, please," Julian began, but she cut him off. "Do not you dare say my name. Get out of my house now. This was my home with Lucas. His spirit is probably still here, and I do not want him to have to look at your face for another second." Her gaze was cold and final. Julian was nearly hysterical. "Olivia, I did not kill him. I swear his death had nothing to do with me. He kept trying to explain, but she would not listen. I've already called the police, she said flatly. If you do not leave now, you can explain the truth of the matter to them yourself. As if on cue, the sound of sirens grew louder outside. A moment later, several police officers burst through the door and apprehended a frantic Julian. He screamed her name as they dragged him away, but Olivia did not even glance in his direction. My ghost friend were thrilled. That CEO is probably dying of regret right now, one said. But at least she cleared your name and got the guy who killed you. I shook my head. Julian did not kill me. I said, I killed myself. Shortly after Olivia had me imprisoned and began forcing the blood transfusions, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctor was blunt. With aggressive treatment and a positive outlook, I might have 6 months. Without it, I had less than a week. In other words, I was a dead man either way. So after much thought, I decided that when Olivia returned, I would arrange my own suicide. But I was not going to die for nothing. I made quiet arrangements. After my death, Olivia would accidentally discover a trail of evidence, all pointing to 2 things: how much I had loved her and how thoroughly Julian had deceived her. Julian did ask to meet me that day, but he never intended to kill me. I planned the car crash myself. I was the only casualty, but the evidence would still point to him. The last call I ever received was from Julian. I was making a bet, a final act of revenge using my own life as the weapon. It seemed my bet had paid off. At some point, Olivia had gone to the kitchen and returned with a fruit knife. She pressed the cold blade against her wrist, her expression firm and resolute. "Lucas," she whispered, "I am coming to be with you." She smiled, and then dragged the blade across her wrist with all her strength. Crimson blood sprayed across the room. My friends cried out in shock. None of us thought she would actually go through with it. And then Olivia saw me. She lost consciousness quickly, her spirit separating from her body. She stared at me for a moment, stunned. "Lucas!" Her hoarse voice was filled with a joyful surprise as she rushed toward me. I sidestepped her easily, looking her spectral form up and down with a sneer. "How filthy!" She froze, then looked down and began frantically trying to wipe the spectral blood from her wrist onto her clothes. "I am sorry," she said. "That is not what I meant," I replied with a cold smile. She stopped, a look of understanding, then utter despair crossing her face. "Lucas, I am sorry. I know I was wrong," she pleaded. "Please, can you forgive me? Let's leave this place together. I will never force you to do anything you do not want to do again. I will never listen to anyone else," she begged. "Let me come with you. Just give me one more chance." She moved toward me again, her hand outstretched, but she could not reach me. My friends had formed a barrier in front of her, shielding me. It was the first time in my life I had ever felt protected. How ironic that the person they were protecting me from was Olivia, the woman I'd spent most of my life with. I looked at her with pure disgust. "It is too late, Olivia." "Why?" she cried, her eyes red-rimmed. "I avenged you. I regret everything. I know I was wrong. Why can you not just give me one last chance?" Watching her hysterical display, I felt surprisingly calm. "So what? You admit you were wrong. You regret it. You have changed. Does that erase all the years of torment I endured?" "I made sure Julian," she began, but I cut her off. "He was not the only one who tormented me. Why should he be the only one to face punishment? Why do you get to live in a fantasy where I forgive you? Julian may have lied to you, but you were the one who carried out the sentence. You were the one who refused to see the truth," I continued. "I knew from the day we married how selfish you were. You married me to spite him, then blamed me for your own unhappiness. You tortured me just to give yourself a moment of peace, to escape your own guilty conscience. And you're doing it again now. You were the abuser. You were the executioner. But in the end, you have managed to wash your hands of all of it." I stared at her, my voice cold as ice. "What gives you that right, Olivia?" It was probably the first time I had ever stood up to her like that. She just stood there, completely frozen. And in that moment, I felt a sense of peace I had never known. A massive weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. My friends were looking at me with surprise. "Lucas," one of them said, You are turning transparent. An older ghost chimed in. That means your attachments are gone. You are ready to move on. No, Lucas, do not leave me, Olivia cried, shoving my friends aside and lunging for me. But it was too late. My hand had already become translucent. Her fingers passed right through me as her gut-wrenching sobs filled the air. I whispered, "Go back, Olivia. It is time to face your punishment." In the end, Olivia was saved. As Julian was being dragged into the police car, he realized she was serious about destroying him, so he decided to take her down with him. He accused her of a long list of illegal business practices. The police returned to the house to investigate and found her bleeding but still alive. Olivia's life was saved, but her mind was broken. She suffered from intermittent psychotic episodes and violent outbursts. Deemed unfit for trial, she was committed to a psychiatric hospital where she would spend the rest of her days. From prison, Julian, using the insider knowledge he had gained from Olivia, exposed dozens of illegal practices at Harrison Enterprises. With the evidence he provided, the company collapsed. For his cooperation, Julian's sentence was reduced to 5 years. After he was released, he disappeared. Rumor has it he tried to con a wealthy woman, but she turned the tables on him, and he was sold into forced labor in a remote area. By the time he was rescued, his health was destroyed. In a final cruel twist of fate, he was diagnosed with actual leukemia. He was in constant need of blood transfusions. Only this time, there was no one left to provide it. He died after collapsing from blood loss, another victim of delayed medical care. But by then, I had long stopped caring. After letting go of my past, I was reborn. I found myself in a happy, loving family with parents who adored me, a wife who cherished me, and a wonderful child of our own. My life was just beginning.